Today's video is sponsored by Dashlane. For a long time now, questions have been arising about whether or not that massive technology companies actually have the best interests of the consumer in mind. Since the 1990s, companies like Google, Apple, and Amazon have gone from wishful startups and garages to companies surpassing $1 trillion in market value, with a ridiculous market share over the technological sphere that our world has evolved into. In that short amount of time, other mediums and technology have been dominated by companies like Facebook, which not only helped pioneer the social media movement, but have now made several acquisitions that genuinely make them a social media titan that has a ridiculous amount of control over when and how we communicate with each other online. The 5 main technology companies are called the Big Five and consist of Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. In recent years, these companies have gathered even more momentum, able to make an insane amount of progress in a short amount of time on the back of the largest economic expansion in United States history from June of 2009 until February of 2020. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic is what even halted this economic expansion, but even in the face of a global pandemic that rattled global markets by large percentages, these companies were able to withstand this insane retraction in the global economy and have come out even stronger than they were before by a massive scale. In fact, analysts have been suggesting that the full effects of the global pandemic may last for years economically and that a global recession could end up lasting for years as well, but recently economies have been more optimistic it seems, and companies like the Big Five couldn't be happier. There's a lot to consider with these companies, and Congress suddenly has interest in them. First and foremost, a monopoly argument can easily be made against every single one of these companies individually, much less as a collective. Second, they control so much of the market share in our technology-driven lives that it's speculated that they could halt innovation and competition from other companies due to their sheer size, which is another massive threat that a monopoly brings on. Third, privacy concerns, especially from Facebook and Google, have become extremely prevalent in recent years with subjects like Cambridge Analytica becoming exposed to the general public. Congress has taken notice of these issues and launched a 16-month investigation into these companies and finally have released their results. And frankly, there are some concerning parts of this report that you should know about. Security concerns online can be easily alleviated with the use of Dashlane. Dashlane is a secure, easy-to-use, everyday tool for your PC, phone, or tablet. Dashlane saves you time online by auto-generating your passwords to make them safer, and stores all of them for a more simple login process. With Dashlane, you don't need to spend time manually resetting passwords or entering in your credit card and personal information. It just works with 2 clicks. On top of storing your digital information, Dashlane has a built-in VPN to protect you from being tracked online. Dashlane's encryption makes it one of the safest ways to store your digital information and makes your life easier. You can try Dashlane for free on your first device at dashlane.com/Optimus. And if you decide to upgrade to premium to use Dashlane everywhere, you can use my code Optimus for 10% off. A massive 500-page report by the House Judiciary Committee concluded that Congress saw major issues in how major U.S. tech companies operate their businesses and the effects that it may have on the American public and American business world. They claim that, quote, these companies wield their dominance in ways that erode entrepreneurship, degrade Americans' privacy online, and undermine the vibrancy of the free and diverse press, many of which are issues that Americans have been raising for years now when it comes to these companies in specific. For instance, for well over a year now, I've been making videos talking about the potential for a lot of these companies to do terrible things and to undermine several aspects of our daily lives. A surprising amount of Americans get their information from websites owned and operated by these companies, many of which have had public issues with the legitimacy of the info that has been appearing on their websites. For instance, Pew Research indicates that as of August 2018, around 43% of American adults got news from Facebook alone, a number that has been rising over time. And as many of you know, Facebook has publicly dealt with misinformation and political corruption issues on their platforms since before the 2016 US presidential election, where many of these issues first really became public and noticeable. Considering the insane amounts of Americans that are getting their information from Facebook alone, you also have to consider how many of these other companies provide information. Google is synonymous with research now. I mean, when you go to look something up online, you don't say, hey, I'm going to use a search engine to figure this out. You say, hey, I'm going to Google it. It literally is in the name of the company. And on top of that, they also have Google News, which is basically a news aggregation service that brings a bunch of news articles from different sources together to provide a tailored user experience full of news and entertainment sources that people want to read. Apple literally has a built-in news app on their iPhones, and in an age of misinformation, these kinds of things can be dangerous. Not only this, but consider the fact that these companies clearly have the ability to manipulate algorithms or search results to make information that they would want presentable appear first. And then all of a sudden it becomes a way muddier scenario. Now, accusations have been made against Facebook and Google in particular in this exact way, claiming that the companies are politically biased into censoring conservative voices for their own reasonings. Not necessarily related to the Big Five, but recently happening that's kind of, I guess, along this whole train of thought here. Twitter recently faced a bunch of scrutiny because of how they handled a New York Post article that came out dropping a bunch of bombshell information about Hunter Biden, who is the son of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden. Twitter even had to publicly address the criticism that they were facing due to how they were quote-unquote censoring the article and preventing the spread of it online. Now, these companies also don't often face any outside competition. The only companies that they're really competing with at this point is one another. And considering the vast amount of resources that they all control, it's not even really them competing at this point, but more or less co-surviving. Microsoft controls an insane amount of our computer, smartphone, cloud storage, and entertainment brands from Xbox to Windows, to even things like Microsoft Office, which businesses and schools use to function. Google owns pretty much everything, it seems. I mean, from YouTube to Google, their ridiculous amount of products online like Google Docs and Gmail. Amazon has become the preferred store of the average person, it seems, with an insane chain of production allowing them to send products to homes across the country within 2 days, and in many major metropolitan areas now, within even hours. Facebook controls several of the most popular social media and communication apps from WhatsApp to Facebook to Instagram. And at this point, it seems like no other companies are a serious enough threat to them, and they all really know this. And in fact, when presented in front of congressional hearings, the CEOs of these companies treat it like child's play, knowing that mostly the elderly out-of-touch members of our government have zero clue on what's actually going on or even really what to do. This is why it's so surprising to see a congressional report that actually makes sense and actually makes a point. In fact, the report claims that CEOs, quote, answers were often evasive and non-responsive, raising fresh questions about whether they believe that they are beyond the reach of democratic oversight. In fact, the government even took a bigger shot recently at Google actually filing an antitrust lawsuit against them that has now been endorsed by over 11 states. Now, this is the largest, most cohesive attempt to actually address the issue of massive tech companies since the 1990s, when Microsoft ironically was investigated for antitrust practices. In the report, many changes were proposed that would weaken these companies' abilities to control so much of the average American life, including, quote, structural separations of some of these companies, aka breakups, prevention of future acquisitions and mergers that would increase the advantage of these companies, and even full reforms for antitrust laws. Also proposed would be to prevent platforms to prioritize themselves in products, which has been a massive concern, especially with Apple, who has been accused of prioritizing products such as Apple Music over Spotify to hog up business. The report claims that there is evidence of antitrust activities by the companies, but immediately doesn't really do anything to take action. However, with the renewed interest by Congress in addressing the problem and also the lawsuit from the Department of Justice, it appears that something may be on the horizon to really make these companies significantly weaker. For instance, they claimed that Amazon has essentially monopolized online retail, which is a service that companies such as Walmart are now trying to compete in, with products like Walmart Plus. It claims that 2.3 million sellers on Amazon sell, with 37% of them relying solely on Amazon for their income, and that they've created a space in which Amazon is the only reliable option for too many people doing business. They then went on to claim that Amazon harvests data on consumer shopping to prioritize their own in-house Amazon products at a lower price, basically using their platform to bully the competition out of profit. Regardless of your views on this, it's historical and it needs to be addressed. People need to know that this is going on. I mean, this is data privacy, economics, social issues all wrapped up into one. So much of your daily activity relies on this report that it's insane. In fact, the website that we're on right now, YouTube, is owned by Google, one of the companies in this investigation. Google responded to this report saying that it relied on, quote, outdated and inaccurate allegations from commercial rivals. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus, make sure to check out Shop Opti down below. Thank you to my channel members, your support helps my channel tremendously, and until my next video guys, this is Optimus, watching where this is headed, and signing out.